On your negative list, we have budgets that are rather small compared to Orange County status, so 3.5 million for Placer and 5 million. Is there we don't have LAFCO doesn't cover school districts, so is there a counterpart to LAFCO for school districts? One, and then two, is there an ability to say these districts should merge? Why have two administrators? Why have two, you know, full staff for administration when you could find amazing cost savings quickly?
So the counter to LAFCO at the school district level varies in each county. It's the county office, it's the county committee on school district organization. And it's made up, generally speaking, each school district, if I recall the process, and it's fairly consistent, each school district gets to vote on a representative. Geographic districts in a given geographic section of the county vote. And it's a panel of 10, 11 folks representing. They're not all board trustees, but many of them are. And any type of exterior boundary, district boundary changes, not interior school attendance areas, but exterior boundary changes would go before that. There is a entire body of law and regulation in California that governs reorganization, unification, mergers in California schools. There's what's commonly called the 9 criteria that have to be looked at. We look at demographics, we look at finance, we look at a whole variety of things when we do those studies. I would say across the state, there's probably 5 to 6 of those studies done a year. We're currently in a conversation about one with 2 very small districts right now in Kern County. Just as it would be with a city or any other jurisdictional area, those are difficult conversations. Yeah. Yes, cost efficiency is certainly the primary benefit there. But taking years and years, decades of those political subdivisions and changing them, merging them together, and the control issues and employment issues and so on, that's a difficult topic for a school district to have. We've seen those conversations happen in some of the foothill communities where declining enrollment is really becoming a bigger and bigger issue. But I don't know, I would say in the last couple of years, maybe we've seen one.
Not many.
Yeah, one happen.
So, impending retirement gives you some latitude to say things that you might not say otherwise. I've never been known for having a great filter in the first
I'm
place.
ready to turn it off
Right.
now.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, for having a great filter in the first place, and
Bring it on.
But I recognize my filter is even less now. But over my 41-year career, I've revisited this issue of the number of school districts in California time over time over time in many different roles. And the fact of the matter is we have too many school districts. That's just the stark reality. 900 or so, up to 1,000 school districts in a state our size, even a large state, is a lot of school districts. And we could gain, I think, significantly from an economic efficiency point of view by looking at that. There hasn't really been the political will to do that, either at the state level or at the local level. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Michael just mentioned some of them. But I would say that there's one way to achieve that goal. And the one way to achieve that goal is make it a financial advantage at the local level for that to occur.
To merge.
Right now, it's pretty much a financial disincentive. There's a disincentive to combine or unify. And so when the day comes that we say to people, you know, if you take those 3 or 4 elementary school districts and combine them with that high school district, and there's a fiscal impact that's positive to your community as a result of that, you're going to see them combine like there's no tomorrow. But that's what's going to happen. The process is onerous, it's time consuming, it's divisive in the community right now, the way it's set up. And given the current state of law, it's just not going to happen unless we make some other kinds of decisions.
Well, thanks for the challenge. Just quick questions on the districts that are qualified. I'm really concerned about LA Unified. That's the big gorilla. You didn't comment on it.
Yeah.
Since you're leaving, Joel, let loose,
It
baby.
is the 500-pound gorilla in the room. And I'm going to defer to Mike because Mike has been in there more recently than I. The district has been deficit spending, and even though they have large unduplicated count, they have a broad and burgeoning infrastructure. And the cost pressures for them are not unlike the cost pressures for other school districts. But the fact of the matter is, they've been running a structural deficit for the last few years, meaning basically that they're spending more than they receive. And so, again, the political will there to make significant reductions. They have not been in cost containment necessarily relative to their size. They've been insulated from that a little bit over time, and they're at a point now where they're going to have to make some, I think, fairly difficult decisions. Michael was in there on our behalf 6 or 8 months ago on a Blue Ribbon Commission to make recommendations to them related to their fiscal future. And so I don't know if you want to comment on that, Michael.
I think a couple big issues in LA stand out. Number one is declining enrollment, and then not right-sizing the organization to reflect that. So over the last decade, they've lost 150,000 students to charters, to neighboring districts, and just to the life cycle. Probably half of that loss is just the life cycle changes neighborhood by neighborhood, where just lower enrollment at this point, it will change over time. They need to right-size the organization. That's obviously a polite word of saying they need to adjust staffing, they need to adjust infrastructure and so on to deal with that loss of 150,000 kids. When you lose ADA, your revenue stops basically immediately, except for the what we call the soft landing of the 1 year deferral where you get to count prior year ADA as you go down. The reason that provision's in law is because while revenue would diminish immediately with the loss of a student, expenses don't diminish. And so it's to buy you time. They've taken a very long time to make those adjustments. And I would say we haven't seen great evidence that they have even tackled that on a more recent time period. They have probably addressed it in some way, but at the same time that's been offset by program expansion, additional counseling, additional services, consistent with their LCAP plan. And so in total, you don't see great changes. They also they are outliers in a couple areas on the expense side. So that's on the revenue side. They're outliers in workers' comp. And there's a variety of reasons probably for that. We didn't get into the fine tuning when we were there of the real drivers behind their workers' compensation costs, but they are clearly outliers on a per student and as a percentage of total budget in that realm by millions of dollars. So whether that's a lack of solid safety plans, it's a lack of good practices in that area, it's a lack of managing the claims more aggressively. Aggressively is not the right word. More appropriately, frankly, because workers' comp actually can be appropriately managed where the proper care is provided to the employee, the injured employee. Healthcare costs, again, as a percentage of total budget and on a per ADA basis, is also an outlier for them. They cover the majority of their employees, including 4-hour with full coverage, family coverage, and in some cases lifetime coverage. And that, of course, drives their costs. Their post-employment employee benefits, obviously, are a significant cost that you're not seeing any longer in other districts. Only a few other districts around the state. Most of them have bargained something to eliminate that risk or transfer that risk somewhere else. Those come to mind. At the same time, they're outliers in a positive way in many of their expense categories and on some inefficiency areas where they've learned from their peers in large districts across the country. And so they deserve kudos for many of those operational areas. But workers' comp and healthcare costs alone are significant expense considerations for them.
Well, it is such a massive district, so anything that happens to that district is going to impact Sacramento, I'm sure. My last two questions, what can I do to help Saddleback, which is on your list? And two, when you are on the qualified or on the negative list, are you allowed to even negotiate pay raises and work with your bargaining units? I mean, it seems like a like a disconnect.
I'll hand the Saddleback question off to Mike, and I'll answer the second question first.
I think we lost your mic, Joel.
Oh, I'm sorry. In terms of qualified negative status, qualified status basically focuses recovery on current plus two. Most of the issues related to qualified districts happen in the out years. Quite frankly, most all districts right now have red ink in year three. That's just common. As a matter of fact, if you don't have red ink in year three, right now you're either growing wildly in both your unduplicated count and the size of your district, or you're not telling the truth. So it's not unusual that districts would have issues in year three, the multi-year projection. However, in a qualified certification, you still have time to move back to in the direction of solvency. I mean, the system of AB 1200 is an early warning system, and the qualified certification is intended to say, look, we're looking at your multi-year projection. You may be deficit spending. You may not be able to maintain your reserve for economic uncertainty, or your fund balance may be trending downward over that current plus two, but there are things that you can do to fix it over that period of time. They continue to have full governance authority. They continue to negotiate, collectively bargain. We would hope, particularly with the assignment a lot of times of fiscal experts, that they would be prudent if they're in the qualified status and more careful. Our recommendation always is in that circumstance to not enter into multi-year agreements, certainly, because you just can't see around the corner into the future. Negative certification is a little bit different. In a negative certification, the county superintendent will assign a fiscal advisor. As I mentioned earlier, that fiscal advisor will have stay and rescind authority over actions by the board. And so one of the requirements under a negative certification is that the district, with the support of the County Office of Education, has to create a fiscal recovery plan. And so any action that might be inconsistent with that fiscal recovery plan, the fiscal advisor could stay or rescind that action of the board. So that has potentially a significant impact over collective bargaining, because the fiscal advisor who actually works for the county superintendent of schools would have to assess whether or not in the process of bargaining the district could actually afford for current plus two any agreement that they were entering into. So the answer to your question is not so much because there's just more time and more flexibility in a qualified certification, and yes, in a negative certification, because of the way it's structured and the assignment of fiscal advisor, collective bargaining can be more impacted at that level. Saddleback, I'm not sure if you have information, Michael.
I don't, Senator. I'll have to get back to you. I don't recall reading or hearing anything of great concern with Saddleback. Orange County, as you know, Orange County Department of Ed is probably one of the stronger county offices of ed throughout our state system, and both of us have experience there. And so I think if there was some concerns, we would have known that. But I'll follow up and let your office know. I would add to Joel's comments, multi-year financial plan and having that be accurate and being at the decision table, whether it be collective bargaining or any other decision table, is absolutely critical. If you are sitting down talking to your employee groups and bargaining, whether you're qualified or negative, key is what is that multi-year financial plan and projections? What is it telling you? And if you are discussing a tentative agreement and it has certain financial considerations, that you've plugged those in and you see what the long-term impact is. And that should be guiding the discussion at the table. Our partners in labor certainly understand the value of that, and it certainly should be guiding the discussion in the boardroom with respect to considering those.
Well, I want to thank you both, and I guess the closer would be if LA needs to downsize, do you have an ability to tell everybody in the other districts, hey, we've got administrators, teachers available, because, you know, one of your points is a shortage of teachers, but if we have an ability to encourage some of our LA folks to enjoy the rural suburban areas of the state, you know, that I don't know, is there a network or a service you provide?
We don't provide that service, but certainly teachers that are highly qualified teachers that find themselves in a job reduction environment in today's situation won't have any trouble finding placement somewhere else. That won't be a hurdle for them.
Senator Jackson?
Thank you. So as I